We are diving deep today into, well, one of the most comprehensive guidebooks ever written. It covers leadership, communication, and moral character. Forget what you think you know about public speaking handbooks.
Yeah, definitely. We're opening Quintilian's Institutio Oratoria. It was written, around 95 CE? And while the title translates roughly to the training of the orator,
Right.
calling it just a rhetoric text that's underselling it by like 1,000 pages, Quintilian basically laid out a curriculum for life.
So our mission here is to unpack Quintilian's vision. It's definitive and frankly pretty revolutionary. The idea is that the ultimate orator isn't just, a technician of language.
Got it all.
He must be a moral agent, the citizen-orator. And his skill in speaking is utterly dependent on his virtue in living. So this deep dive, it's really about understanding communication as this profound, ancient form of civic duty.
And Quintilian does this so brilliantly. He contrasts persuasion used for, base personal gain, which he saw as a corruption of the art, with speech used solely for the betterment of the commonwealth, for society. He insists that the ethical foundation, it has to be poured first. The character has to be built long before you even think about crafting an elegant sentence.
Right, structure before style, in a way. Character before charisma.
Exactly. And we've drawn on the requirements he sets out, the explicit ones. We're putting them next to Socratic ideas, Stoic philosophy, Cicero's demands for, total knowledge.
Wow.
And also some powerful modern examples of civic rhetoric. Think Barack Obama on mutual responsibility or Sojourner Truth demanding economic access.
It's a really intense standard, isn't it? A challenging one. And it kind of forces us, you listening too, to question the motives of people trying to persuade us today.
Absolutely. Are they really after the common good?
Okay, let's unpack this foundational idea then. Section 1. Virtue as the orator's foundation. This whole concept, the orator is an inherently moral agent. It feels like the core paradox of the whole Institutio Oratoria. Why start with morality? Why not grammar or delivery?
Well, because Quintilian is setting a standard for the good person speaking well. That's his ideal. He argues the orator must be a wise man, a verbonus in the Roman sense.
Okay.
But he clarifies this isn't some ivory tower philosopher just thinking about abstract forms. No, this is the Roman wise man, a true statesman, someone whose wisdom is proven in practice, in experience, someone deeply involved in, the machinery of society and justice.
The demand isn't just intellectual, it's existential. You can't just study ethics, you have to be ethical.
Precisely. He demands comprehensive character. He literally argues that no man can achieve sufficient skill in speaking unless he studies, and I quote, all the workings of nature and forms his character on the precepts of philosophy and the dictates of reason.
That is such a totalizing requirement. It means your entire life needs to be, disciplined, dedicated, so that your very being is, as he put it, wedded to the knowledge of things human and divine.
Right. The idea is if you fundamentally misunderstand how the universe works or how humanity operates, if you misunderstand justice, fundamentally,
then your speech is flawed, no matter how pretty it sounds.
Exactly. Your speech, however eloquent on the surface, will be foundationally flawed. It can't lead to true good if it's built on a misunderstanding of reality.
And this immediately brings Plato into the picture, doesn't it? That shadow hanging over the whole field of rhetoric. Quintilian is basically fighting a centuries-old battle against the Socratic critique, the one from the Gorgias dialogue.
That's such a crucial context, yeah. Socrates didn't just dislike rhetoric, he seriously questioned if it was even a legitimate art, a technique at all.
He kind of dismissed it, right?
Yeah.
Called it a knack gained by experience, or worse, a form of pandering, flattery, basically, just designed to please people, not actually help them.
And the key difference for Socrates was always intention. If the orator doesn't genuinely aim at the good of the citizens, then all that technical skill, it's dangerous.
Like a chef who makes delicious food but knows nothing about nutrition.
Exactly. You can make tasty stuff that slowly poisons the diner. Quintilian has to establish right from the start that his orator is aiming at the good, not just what feels gratifying in the moment.
And Socrates takes this moral argument somewhere really challenging, even for us today. That paradox. It's fundamentally better to suffer than to do wrong.
Yeah.
Why is that moral foundation so critical that suffering injustice is actually preferable to committing it?
Because Socrates' primary focus was always the state of the soul. He argued that the wrongdoer, even if they escape all punishment, even if they live like a successful tyrant, they are actually more miserable.
More miserable how?
Or less well off, maybe is a better way to put it, than the victim. Because the person who commits wrong, according to Socrates, poisons their own soul. If you believe your soul suffers like permanent moral damage or pollution by committing an injustice,
Then it's better to suffer something temporary, like physical harm or losing money.
than to inflict permanent spiritual harm on yourself.
Yeah.
That's the core of it.
So the tyrant, the one who gets away with everything, indulging in the worst crimes. Socrates thought they led the most wretched life, because their spiritual sickness is never cured by, say, punishment or repentance.
Exactly right. And Quintilian, by insisting on the orator's inherent moral goodness, he's trying to purify rhetoric, to reclaim it from being just a tool for that unpunished tyrant. He wants to elevate it back into a necessary tool for the moral statesman.
And this need for inner moral cleaning, it finds really powerful reinforcement in Stoic philosophy too, right? We have to talk about the internal struggle needed to actually maintain these high principles.
Yeah, Seneca, a contemporary of Quintilian, writing his letters from a Stoic, he's crystal clear. Precepts, rules for action, they're useless if the soul isn't first set free. Meaning you can read every ethics book ever written, but if your inner life is just dominated by passions, by uncontrolled emotions, you'll never actually act honorably when it counts.
So, first things first, remove the obstacles. Seneca says you have to remove the conditions that block honorable action. Specifically, he mentions mistaken admiration and mistaken fear.
Think about that for a second. Mistaken admiration, it means you chase things that are ultimately worthless. Wealth, maybe, or fleeting fame, superficial status.
Things that don't really matter in the long run.
Right. And mistaken fear. That means you shy away from doing what's necessary because you're afraid of, physical danger or maybe just social criticism. Seneca specifically lists a trio that needs purging: greed, fear, and lust.
And if those three internal masters are still running the show?
Well, they'll hold you back. Or they'll forbid you from doing the difficult, honorable things required of the citizen orator. Things like fighting for your country when it's hard, or defending an unpopular client, or calling out corruption even when it's risky.
So your moral actions can't just depend on luck or whether it's convenient at the moment.
No, they won't last if they do. To keep that character consistent, Seneca argues you have to understand the fundamental reason for acting rightly. And you can only access that reason once the soul is liberated from these disruptive passions, this inner cleaning, this emotional housekeeping. It's the necessary prerequisite before we even start talking about education.
That's a perfect transition.
Yeah.
Okay, so the moral mandate sets the stage. Now, what does this liberated moral person actually need to know to function effectively in the public sphere? This takes us straight into Section 2, the education of the citizen orator.
And here, we have to bring in Cicero. He provides that monumental definition of the ideal orator in his work De Oratoria. Cicero insists the orator must be full and perfect, able to speak fully and fluently, copius sic dicere on all subjects.
Okay, that sounds immense. Frankly, almost impossible. It means you can't just be a specialist in, say, legal details or political speeches.
Nope.
If a case touches on physics or history or philosophy or even engineering, the orator has to be fluent.
That's the ideal, yeah. It demands this incredible intellectual curiosity that spans the whole spectrum of knowledge. Cicero specifically notes that knowledge shouldn't be confined just to, courtroom use.
Right.
It has to be drawn from some obscure science. And that obscure science could mean almost anything: astronomy, deep history, complex military strategy, whatever the situation demands. The orator needs to be the ultimate generalist, someone who can synthesize knowledge across different fields.
So the expectation is that the orator acts as a kind of intellectual conduit for the whole society. If the experts in a field can't communicate their findings effectively.
Then the moral citizen orator steps in. They need to be the one who understands it, translates it, and presents that complex information clearly for the public good. That's the vision.
And this massive knowledge base, it has to be paired with a deep psychological understanding, right?
Yeah.
The orator needs to be keen, shrewd, skilled, natura elusuque caído, as Latin goes through both nature and practice. Why?
Because all that knowledge, it's basically useless if you don't know how to deliver it effectively, if you can't connect with your audience.
You have to know them intimately. Quintilian insists the orator must grasp the veins of every class, age, and order, and actually taste the minds and feelings, mentes sensusque dicaste, of the people he's addressing. That's way beyond just surface-level demographics.
Oh, absolutely. It's empathetic immersion. It's the ability to walk into a courtroom or stand before an assembly and immediately understand the emotional landscape. Who's angry, who's afraid, who's indifferent, and crucially, why. This intimate grasp is vital because, as Quintilian knew and Cicero definitely argued, cold logic alone just won't cut it for persuasion.
True persuasion often requires some kind of emotional disturbance, perturbationum, not just cold cognitionum. If you just lay out the facts, yeah, you might teach the judge or the audience something.
But you won't move them, and if they aren't moved, they probably won't act.
Cicero even went so far as to say that in really complex cases, the emotional component in quotient omnia, it's everything. The judge knows the law, maybe, but the orator's job is to make the judge feel the justice or the injustice of the situation.
Right. And that requires mastering the soul of the audience, really provoking sentimentality sometimes, or indignation or pity, depending on the case.
So if the orator speaks too simply, too briefly, or just too intellectually, too clinically,
They fail. They fail to achieve that essential emotional movement. They might be technically correct, sure, but they're rhetorically ineffective. They haven't persuaded.
and this is exactly why modern communication literature, even success coaching, echoes this ancient demand so strongly. Think
Yeah.
about establishing deep rapport.
Yeah. If you want to influence someone, the first step is always to seek to understand their unique situation, their feelings, before you even think about offering advice or making your case. If they're angry or defensive, they're just closed off.
And this really gets to why the character ethic, as some call it, beats the personality ethic almost every time. You can use all the technical tricks, the superficial charm, the practiced smiles.
But if people sense duplicity, if they feel you haven't genuinely tried to understand them, or if they sense your moral foundation is shaky, they just won't trust you.
You haven't built up that emotional bank account, as Covey would put it. Trust is the absolute prerequisite for genuine persuasion. If you try to influence people with just techniques, they'll feel manipulated, maybe even exploited.
Quintilian understood that. He knew the orator's character itself had to inspire the openness needed for that emotional persuasion to actually take root. Without that inner moral compass, the orator is just reduced to a flattering manipulator, no matter how much knowledge they have rattling around in their head.
Okay, so let's assume our ideal orator has managed to achieve this solid moral foundation, and they've acquired that comprehensive intellectual breadth. How do they actually employ the tools of the trade? Let's move into section 3, mastery of technique and style.
Right, so Quintilian first has to define rhetoric carefully. He needs to distinguish his ideal orator from, the sophists and tricksters. He looks at various definitions, and he specifically rejects the simple idea that rhetoric is merely the power of persuasion.
Why reject persuasion? It seems central.
Because, as he pointed out, with a bit of that classic Roman bluntness, harlots, flatterers, and seducers also persuade people by speaking, but they are definitely not the ideal citizen orator he envisions.
Good point. So persuasion is the result, maybe, but not the defining characteristic of the art itself.
Exactly. He finds Aristotle's definition much more precise. Rhetoric as the ability to detect every element in any given subject that might conduce to persuasion. It's about the strategic process, finding the available means.
Okay, so what definition does Quintilian prefer then?
Well, he settles on a working goal. Rhetoric is the leading of men by the power of speech to the conclusion desired by the orator. But again, he immediately has to add that crucial caveat.
The orator must desire the just conclusion.
Yes. Otherwise, this definition is still incomplete. It could still apply to any manipulative demagogue just trying to get their way. The moral component is inescapable for Quintilian.
Got it. Now let's talk about the actual toolbox, starting with invention, finding the argument. What's the first step?
The orator's first task is absolutely critical. Identify the basis of the cause. The basis.
Okay, the basis. That sounds technical. What does it mean?
It's a core concept that dictates the entire structure of the speech. The basis is the single foundational point on which the decision has to be given. It's the hinge upon which the whole cause will stand or fall.
Can you give an example, like a modern one?
Sure. Let's use a simple courtroom scenario. Imagine a defendant is accused of stealing bread. The orator representing them needs to decide the basis. Option 1, deny the facts. My client didn't take the bread. Option 2, claim justification. Yes, my client took the bread, but he was starving, and it was absolutely necessary to save his life. Option 3, dispute the legal term. Taking the bread wasn't technically theft. Maybe it was borrowing with intent to return, or something else.
And Quintilian gives advice on which to choose.
He does, and he's brutally pragmatic about it. He says denying the facts is usually the stronger line of defense if you can manage it.
Why?
Because if you can successfully argue the act didn't even happen, you avoid the much, much harder task of trying to justify an act that everyone agrees was committed and which might look pretty bad on the surface. Identifying the strongest basis dictates everything that follows, every piece of evidence you select, every emotional appeal, every single word you choose.
Right, that makes sense. Once the argument, the basis is fixed, then we move to delivery, focusing on emotional impact through wording and style.
Exactly. Quintilian argues that, yes, arguments must be clear and distinct, but for subjects of real importance, matters of life and death, or issues of state, every kind of ornament should be employed. Style matters.
So this pushes back against that idea that good writing or speaking must always be bare, minimalist, utilitarian. Quintilian sees style as, what, a force multiplier.
Absolutely. Ornament isn't just decoration for him. Take metaphor, for instance. He says it doesn't just make language pretty, it can actually throw a flood of light upon a subject. It can make a complex idea suddenly understandable, memorable.
Oh, interesting.
And furthermore, he observed very shrewdly that charm of style often makes an argument less suspect, somehow more convincing. If the audience is engaged by the language itself, they're less inclined to actively resist the core message being delivered.
We definitely see that in famous lines from history, like Cicero's, "The laws are silent in the midst of arms." That's highly decorated, right? Metaphorical.
Yeah.
But it lends this immense, almost tragic weight to a serious point about legal collapse during wartime.
It connects instantly with the listener's emotions and imagination. But, and this is key, ornament can't succeed without artistic structure and effective delivery. Quintilian uses this wonderful analogy. He compares artistic structure to the throwing thong and the bowstring.
Okay, how does that work?
They are what give force and direction to the spear and the arrow. Without them, the weapon is useless.
So if the sentence is broken or disarranged, if the structure is sloppy,
All its force and attraction just disappear. The argument falls flat. It's like an arrow trying to fly without a bowstring propelling it.
the structure has to be right because the thoughts need to land in the listener's mind with maximum impact. A chaotic presentation just confuses people.
And anything that, as Quintilian might put it, stumbles at the portal of the ear, well, it can't penetrate deep enough to reach the emotions. So you see, even style and structure are inherently tied back to the psychology of persuasion.
Okay, and for all of this technique, invention, style, structure to actually function in the moment, we need the treasure house of the mind, memory. Quintilian calls it the animating principle, coordinating everything.
It's huge for him. Memory has to hold this constant, readily accessible store of precedents, laws, rulings, historical sayings, relevant facts. Everything. You simply cannot be that ultimate generalist, able to speak on all subjects, if your mind is empty or disorganized.
And it's crucial not just for delivering pre-written speeches, but for extempore eloquence too, right? Speaking off the cuff.
Absolutely vital. The mind is constantly looking ahead, depositing discoveries, evidence, structural ideas into memory. Memory then acts as a kind of transmitting agent, ready for instant deployment when needed in a debate or discussion.
And this brings us to that fascinating anecdote about how mnemonic techniques were supposedly discovered, the story of Simonides of Chios.
Oh yeah, the banquet hall collapse. It's a grim story, but insightful. He was at this big dinner party, the roof tragically collapses, and it mangles the bodies of the guests so badly they're unrecognizable.
Oh, terrible. So the relatives couldn't even identify their own dead loved ones.
Right. But Simonides, who had survived, found he could restore each dead person to their grieving family simply by remembering the precise order in which everyone had been sitting at the table just before the collapse.
Wow. He remembered their places.
Exactly. And that realization that memory works powerfully not just by rote repetition, but by spatial order, by location, by association that gave birth to the principle of the memory palace, or the method of loci, using locations to remember things.
So this story proves how memory isn't just passive storage. It's a system of profound structure that brings clarity and utility out of chaos, which is exactly what a rhetorician and orator has to do with complex arguments.
Precisely. This is why memory is so central for Quintilian. It's arguably the highest intellectual function, using creative thinking and organizational structure to access vast amounts of knowledge instantaneously. For the citizen-orator, who has to debate real-time issues of state, this mastery of internal mental structure is absolutely non-negotiable.
And that leads us perfectly into the application of all these demanding requirements. We've covered the moral foundation, the intellectual breadth, the technical skills. Now, what does the citizen orator actually do out there in the arena, especially thinking about our modern world? Let's look at section 4, civic duty and social impact.
Okay. Quintilian's ancient ideal, when you translate it to modern terms, demands that the orator's ultimate goal must be rooted in a law of mutual exchange and responsibility. It fundamentally rejects the idea that your success or your persuasion should come at the expense of others. That's the core civic ideal.
And we hear echoes of this in modern leadership.
Yeah.
Barack Obama, for instance, invoked this fundamental idea when he was talking about striving for a more perfect union. He stressed what he claimed all the world's great religions demand,
Which is?
that we do unto others as we would have them do unto us, the golden rule.
Right.
And he connects that rule directly to civic duty. He said, let us be our brother's keeper. Let us be our sister's keeper. That sense of a common stake we have in one another, that shared responsibility. That has to be the foundation of our politics and our public discourse. It's the absolute opposite of a win-lose paradigm.
Yeah, the win-lose or even lose-lose competitive mindset. It's often based on scarcity thinking, on selfishness. But true effectiveness, the kind rooted in principle, always seeks a mutually beneficial outcome. What modern thinkers like Covey call the third alternative, or simply win-win.
So Quintilian's ideal orator, committed to the public good, must always be seeking the outcome that benefits the city, the community, not just himself or his immediate faction or party.
Exactly. And this principled approach, it requires real courage, especially courage to challenge cynicism. Obama criticized what he saw as a profound mistake. Those who speak as if society is just static, as if it's incapable of progress or change.
Right. He argued that the true genius of a nation, particularly America in his view, is its very ability to change, to evolve towards justice.
And that change, just as Quintilian demanded 2,000 years ago, requires more than just nice words. It demands action, deeds. It means actually enforcing civil rights, investing in schools, ensuring fairness, basically, providing, as Obama put it, ladders of opportunity.
And we see that demand for concrete deeds echoing so powerfully in the rhetoric of someone like Sojourner Truth back in the post-Civil War era. She wasn't just asking for abstract rights. She was demanding tangible industrial and economic opportunity.
Yes, she specifically stressed the need to get formerly enslaved colored people onto land out west, or, crucially, to get them admitted into skilled trades like printing, noting how they were systematically shut out of many common vocations at the time.
That shows that the true citizen orator, the one really working for the community, has to fight for the concrete resources people need to thrive, not just deliver soaring speeches about ideals.
It's about practical betterment. And that proactive mindset, seeing the need, recognizing opportunity and responsibility, it's reinforced powerfully by Russell H. Conwell's famous lecture, Acres of Diamonds.
Ah, yes, the story of Ali Hafed.
Right. The man who sells his farm, wanders the world seeking his fortune, dies tragically, only for the world's most magnificent diamond mine to be discovered right back on the property he sold. It's such a potent lesson about recognizing opportunities that are right under your nose.
And how does that apply to the citizen orator?
Well, it speaks directly to that proactive mindset they need. You likely have the resources, the capabilities, the diamonds right where you are, within your community, within yourself. The moral and intellectual demand following Quintilian is to recognize them and then put them to use for the good of that community.
And Conwell himself seems to have exemplified that link between ethical ambition and civic duty, didn't he?
He absolutely did. He was very clear that money is power and that people should be ambitious to possess it, but not for self-indulgence.
Why then?
Because, as he argued, you can simply do more good with money than without it. And the proof is in his actions.
The money he raised from delivering that Acres of Diamonds lecture literally thousands of times.
Wasn't for personal enrichment, no. It was used to found Temple University in Philadelphia. And its specific mission was to offer higher education to every person who worked for a living, people who couldn't afford traditional university.
That is a direct link back to Quintilian's virtue, isn't it? Conwell operated under that law of mutual exchange he preached. No man can get rich himself unless he enriches others.
His own prosperity was directly measured by the quality and quantity of civic service he rendered. That's ethical ambition in action. It aligns perfectly with the citizen orator ideal.
Okay, but finally, we have to acknowledge the sheer courage this requires. The citizen orator, operating out in the public arena, fighting for the public good. They will inevitably face intense criticism, conflict, maybe even danger.
Oh, absolutely. Theodore Roosevelt basically confirmed this. He stated very clearly that government by the people means the people have the right to truthful criticism of their public servants. When you step into that arena, when you dare greatly, as he put it,
You expose yourself. to failure, to mistakes, to intense scrutiny.
And how you respond to that scrutiny really defines your integrity as a speaker, as a leader. Think about someone like Malcolm X. Now, he was perceived by many, certainly for much of his career, as an extremist, someone who shocked people.
Right.
But eventually, particularly after his break with the Nation of Islam and his Hajj, he achieved recognition from many, even former critics, as a true man. Why? Precisely because he demonstrated profound moral change. He publicly abandoned racism and hatred later in his life.
So his authenticity, his genuine moral evolution, that's what defined his ultimate impact, even though it led to conflict with his former allies and, tragically, his assassination.
I think that's a fair reading for many. That authenticity requires profound courage. The courageous orator in this mold knows that integrity and moral intent matter more than just winning every argument or gaining universal approval. They value courage itself, perhaps, even more than the immediate outcome. This ability to absorb setbacks, maybe even failure, without letting it destroy your sense of worth or purpose, that's like the final shield of the citizen orator.
Wow. So this whole deep dive, it really shows an absolute, almost undeniable alignment between this Roman rhetorical ideal from 2 millennia ago and the modern demands of civic integrity, doesn't it? Eloquence, in the end, seems inseparable from integrity.
That's the core message of Quintilian's Institutio Oratoria. It insists fundamentally that you must master the self, your character, before you can ever truly hope to master the tongue, your style, your technique. The character ethic ultimately triumphs over the personality ethic, because true, lasting power is defined by the ability to render service, to enrich others, all founded on that law of mutual exchange.
This is really foundational wisdom, I think, for anyone who seeks to communicate with real impact. So if the order's greatest asset is, as Quintilian believed, this deep knowledge of the human and the divine, and their greatest duty is always to the public good, well, that leaves us with a massive ethical question for ourselves today, doesn't it? For you, listening.
It does. How should you ethically evaluate the motives and the foundations of all the voices seeking to persuade you every single day? Are they genuinely aiming for truth and justice in their arguments? Are they demonstrating that deep knowledge, that broad understanding, and crucially, that moral integrity Quintilian demanded?
Or are they merely employing sophisticated techniques, maybe charm, maybe clever arguments, just to achieve their desired conclusion, regardless of whether that conclusion is actually good or just or true?
The answer to that question, well, it determines whether you're listening to a genuine citizen orator or just a very sophisticated, perhaps even dangerous, pandering flatterer. Something to think about.